Well, let's get more on our top story and Hillary Clinton's nomination. Tom Long is a lecturer at the University of Reading who specialises in American politics. Tom, great to have you with us. So, word on the street there is that Hillary Clinton knocked it out of the park with this speech, but this convention certainly has been plagued with controversy, mostly the burn factor. What's your take? How'd she do?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Yes, I think ultimately Hillary Clinton was able to pull together most parts of the Democratic coalition. There are still a few diehard supporters of Bernie Sanders who are feeling the burn and not quite ready to get fully behind Hillary Clinton. But I think for the most part, she has those supporters. I think also she was very focused, and the final day of the convention was very focused on reaching out to disaffected Republicans and moderate independents who maybe are not quite at ease with Donald Trump and his rather harsh rhetoric.
Tom, let's talk a little bit more about Donald Trump and the polling at the moment. He got a big bump after his convention last week. It doesn't seem to have worked out that way for Hillary Clinton. The gap seems to be getting smaller and smaller. Are you ready to call it yet?
No, I think it's too early to call it. Though there's a lot of conflicting evidence in the polls about how big that bump was. It seems like there was already some pro-Trump movement in the polls before his convention started. He probably did get a couple points bump in the polls. It's too early to see what sort of bump Hillary Clinton is likely to get in the polls. It will be probably until next week, until we start to see really good polling evidence post-convention, where the surveys are taken post-convention. I suspect she'll see a pretty solid bump because this was a convention that, after the first couple of days, was largely on message, was able to claim this moderate mantle, reached out to moderate Americans who are often very pro-military. She had a strong backing from the United States military on stage. Former members of the military, really calls to veterans in a way that Trump did not have, at least in terms of the formal establishment but behind him.
And you say that she is likely to get a bump here, Tom. How much of that do you think has to do with people who are normally Republicans choosing to vote for her because Donald Trump is such a polarizing figure? Because she did sort of make special mention of that in her speech, appealing to everyone, not just Democrats.
Absolutely, and so did her vice presidential pick, Tim Kaine, who very memorably said that if there are people in the party of Lincoln who are looking for a new home, they would find it this election with the Democrats. So there was a very concerted pitch to Republicans, or at least to independents who often lean Republican. I think she is likely to consolidate a lot of that vote ultimately. And she's going to need it, really, to get over Donald Trump's narrow but very deep support from a more conservative or a more populist right. I do think that she's going to find a fair amount of support there. People who maybe find the politics of someone like Michael Bloomberg more attractive, that sort of moderate fiscal conservatism but more socially liberal position that has fallen out of favor in today's Republican Party. Those voters are likely to eventually move to someone like Clinton, even though they have very little personal affection for her, because ultimately that's where their interests and their policy preferences tend to lie.
Tom Long, great to get your insight. Thanks so much for joining us.